Hi guys, welcome back. It's Kirsten and it's time for my April reading wrap up. It's been such a better month than March, I'm not gonna lie. We ended up on 13 books, which was 5,176 pages, which is my average, that's pretty good. And the actual star ratings for books was just so much higher than last month, so I'm so happy with it. We ended up with 5 5 stars, 5 4 stars, and 3 3 stars with no 2 or 1 stars, which was amazing, and also no DNFs. So it's been a brilliant reading month, which I hope yours was good as well. But let's get straight to these books that I have read. Starting off with the 3 stars, I did read The Falconer by Elizabeth May. I picked this book up based on Becca from Becca and the Books, who I will of course have linked below. She was mentioned in this book, and to be fair, she hadn't read it at the time, and she said that what she had heard is that it was a book recommended for people who like A Court of Thorns and Roses, because we have our main character who is hunting down fae creatures, but we are set in Scotland in the past, but with steampunk. Now, I have to admit, the setting of the book is what I loved the most. I loved the steampunk, I loved the Scottish setting, it was really, really good. But I will say that the actual storyline itself wasn't that memorable. It was very predictable in where it's going. It's a simple YA tropey read, and I did like it, but mainly just for the atmosphere and setting of the book, rather than anything else. Again, I don't mind it. I don't know if I'm going to carry on with this. It's not a priority for me to carry on with this book, but I can say I did enjoy the setting, which is why it got the 3 stars. Then I also read Chalkman by CJ Tudor, and I picked this book up from a charity shop on the recommendation from Christina from Christina Campbell Books. Again, everyone I mentioned will be linked below, but she had read this book. She also ended up giving it a 3 stars, and I was intrigued enough by her review, which was in October last year, that I actually then picked up this book, and I thought, why not give it a try when it came up for one of my prompts. This book, it frustrated me because we have 2 different timelines. One is from 2016, where we're following our main character as a 40-year-old man, and then we have a past timeline that was set 30 years beforehand, where at the time there was a lot of tension in their society. So we have our main character's mum. She ran an abortion clinic, so you had a lot of that tension and aggression from the church believers that were like, it's wrong to get abortions and stuff. So that I found interesting to have that commentary in a book, because I haven't read that before in a book. I mean, to be fair, I don't read many contemporaries, so it's not surprising. That was very interesting. We also have the setting of all these chalk figures. We have the thriller setup. You know that there's a murder because that's in the prologue of the book. So there's all this setup which I really enjoyed. But the 2016 timeline was just really, really slow, and I just wasn't that interested in his life as a 40-year-old English teacher with an alcohol problem. It wasn't that interesting to me. And then by the end of the book, everything that happened, I predicted most of it. I feel like it could have been pushed that little bit further and it would have been a better book. I don't know, it still left me with questions. I'm not sure. I gave it 3 stars because I did enjoy half of what I was reading, but it was just that second timeline I wasn't a fan of, and the ending, like I say, could have been pushed a little bit more, but a 3-star read nonetheless. And then my last 3-star read for the month was Anna K by Jenny Lee. Now, Christina gifted this to me for Christmas, and the reason why she got it is because she loved Anna Karenina, and so she hoped I would like the retelling. Now, this is a YA contemporary retelling of Anna K, and it was a fun read. I did enjoy it. It is basically just rich people drama, and for that I just found it so entertaining. Though I will say there is text speech used in this, so a lot of times when they're referring to girlfriend and boyfriend, it's all GF, BF throughout the book. It just irritates me because yes, it went with the setting and the vibe of this book, but no, I don't think it was necessary. I will say the ending of this book wasn't as emotionally impactful as it could have been if we had explored our character's emotions a little bit more. I did like our main character Anna. I liked her development and her pushing out against what she'd been doing her whole life, which is trying to be this perfect daughter, perfect girlfriend, and actually starting to just enjoy her life. So I did really like her. but I do feel like the other characters could have done with a bit more development, and also a lot of the love interest in this was just all insta-love, which for me to believe it, it's got to be built that little bit more. But like I said, this was an enjoyable book. I would happily reread this, and I am now going to be getting Anna Karenina, even though it's a massive book and I'm kind of scared of it, because I do want to see how well this is a retelling of that classic, because I've got no idea. Also, look how gorgeous this cover is. I mean, it's just beautiful. So yeah, a fun YA contemporary read, although there is a lot of trigger warnings for drugs, alcohol, sex, cheating, like I said, rich people drama. Okay, moving on to 4 stars. So I did have an audio book, which was Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, and I really enjoyed this. I was listening to it because I watched the Netflix adaptation of this, and it was an interesting film. Me and my sister were watching it a few years ago, and we were a bit like, okay then, at the end of it. But I will say the book is so much better. I feel like there is more atmosphere to it. The film expands upon things that didn't really happen in the book, and I do feel like, yes, it gave it more action for the film, which I completely understand, but I also feel like the book was just better, and it also explained everything, like what was happening in Area X, the biological standpoints of it all, a lot better. So the reason why I listened to it is because I was interested in getting the book because of the fact that it's got this gorgeous pink cover. Also because I had an interest in the film, but I wasn't engrossed by it. So I wasn't sure if the book would be better. So I listened to it instead, and actually I do want to get this book physically, and I want to finish the Southern Reach trilogy because I do think it is really interesting. It's probably my first foray into adult sci-fi. It's not a genre that I'm normally interested in, but I did enjoy this, and it is a weird book. It kind of takes weird tangents along the way. I just felt like the atmosphere to it was just perfect, and there were so many intriguing, unusual things that you just couldn't explain. So for those of you that haven't seen the film or read the book, it is about this area where it's now called Area X, where this kind of like biological change is happening, and groups of explorers have been going into this place to try and gather information, but they either never come back or they do come back, but they are not themselves. Now our main character is a part of an expedition into Area X because her husband went in before her. So it's a really interesting one, and I do recommend it if you're interested in sci-fi, but maybe pick it up in a library or listen to it as an audiobook first before you go into buying these. So physically, I then had quite a few short books that are in my 4 stars, but I really enjoyed all of them. And the first one is The Island of Dr Moreau by H.G. Wells. Now this was a really creepy book, I'm not gonna lie. It's all about our main character who gets shipwrecked and ends up on this island with Dr. Moreau and his assistant, but they are experimenting on animals, and you can see how so many films, books, TV series have referenced this book. It was a very accessible classic book. H.G. Wells' writing is very modern, it's very easy to read. The atmosphere that you have in this book, it's so disturbing. Disturbing is probably the right word of how I felt throughout this book. It was very disturbing to read because Dr. Moreau is performing experiments on animals, so there is a lot of animal torture in this book. It was really gut-wrenching to read at times. It was so interesting, and the way that these beast men have their kind of like religion that they have formed because of Dr. Moreau. It was very creepy. Definitely a good horror classic, and one I do recommend. Just be careful of trigger warnings going into it. It is a short book, but it packs a punch. Then we have 3 mangas that I read and gave 4 stars to. The first one being Moriarty the Patriot, and this is a take on Professor Moriarty from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes series. This manga series is taking the character of Professor Moriarty, having him grow up from a young child into the mastermind that he is in the Sherlock Holmes books. I really liked this. We had a lot of look into England's society at the time that the books were written, seeing how Moriarty disagrees with the social structure, how he feels it is so unfair, and as a result becoming this criminal mastermind to set things straight. It was a fun, quick read, as manga are. It was helping me get out of my reading slump that I found myself in March. I think I've already mentioned this in my manga haul anyway, which is going to be the same for the next two, so I'm going to keep it brief. But this was 4 stars and I do want to get the next one. Then we have Ejin the Demihuman. Again, mentioned this in my manga haul, but this was a good book, but it has a lot of body horror in it, so if you're not into that, I wouldn't recommend it. But this is a book where we have our main character who realizes he is a demihuman. Now, demihumans are cruelly experimented upon because they cannot die, so scientists are torturing them and killing them in the name of science. So it's horrible, and when we find out our main character is this demihuman, everyone is hunting for him because they want to experiment on him. Some of the artwork in here is just gruesome, and I'm so intrigued as to where this book is going to go. My partner's read more of it and he says it is a very dark, twisted manga. Again, trigger warnings for all of that, but I did like it, and I did like the friendship that we have in this, because our main character has a best friend who's like, I don't care if you're demihuman, I'm going to help you. So that was really lovely to see as well. And the final manga I read this month was Tokyo Ghoul Volume 1, and this is a book that I did enjoy. I ended up getting the rest of the manga series. Well, I'm missing like 4 of them, but this was so much fun. I really liked it. We're following our main character who is very bookish. He's interested in a girl and he's talking about how his favourite date would be going to a bookstore and stuff, and I'm just like, yes, love it. Yet in this world we have things called ghouls, which look like normal human beings except they want to eat your flesh. And this weird accident happens where our main character has a run-in with a ghoul and it all goes wrong from there. And I really liked it. I thought it was a really fun light read. There is obviously some horror-esque moments to it, but I don't actually feel it's anywhere near as bad as Ejin and the darker twist that takes, but it is more of a lighter horror book. I mean, I haven't read much manga. I don't know all the terminology, so I know there's like a certain word for this genre, but I enjoyed it. It was a good fun read, and like I said, reading all this manga got me out of my reading slump. It set me on the path to a very good month of April. I recommend this. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I also listened to 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. We're now getting into our 5-star reads for the month. This was such an amazing book. I'm not going to lie, I do want to get it physically. I wasn't sure if I was going to like this. 1, because it's contemporary, and contemporary is not my favourite genre, and 2, because there's so much hype around this book, and sometimes I find that the hype doesn't necessarily reflect the book, but actually it's so well founded. This is such a brilliant book. We're following our journalist and she gets the opportunity of a lifetime to do Evelyn Hugo's life biography. It's an amazing story. So we are getting the life story of Evelyn Hugo, the reason behind her 7 husbands, and everything else that goes alongside it. It is a brilliant book about a woman that does whatever she needs to do to get what she wants. And you also have a lot of look into society around the 50s and 60s, how they reflect upon things like being gay, how much that was looked down upon in society, and how it would impact someone that is a movie star or a director, and how it would just tear their life apart. And then you also have the reflection of media and how much it can impact someone's life, how honestly horrible it is. Like, constantly having your life hounded by media is not the best. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy doing my booktube videos, but I don't think I could deal with journalists and stuff having their say on my life and things like that. And I do feel like our celebrities do have it hard, and this book really brings that to life. But I just thought it was such a phenomenal story, and the ending of this book was just heartbreaking. I cried at times, I laughed at times. I thought it was such a brilliant book and would highly recommend to pretty much everybody. I think it's a phenomenal story. Then I want to talk about my book of the month. Now, this was really hard to choose from because I also had 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I absolutely loved. I have another book which I'm going to get to in a moment, which I also loved, but this is the book that probably surprised me the most, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is a book that I got in a charity shop, and honestly, I have been putting off reading it for months and months and months. I really didn't think it would be something I would enjoy, and I freaking loved it. It was phenomenal. She is a new favourite author. I've got her second book, The Starless Sea, which I cannot wait to read. I just thought it was mind-blowing. The writing in it is so beautiful and lyrical, and it just builds this amazing world of magic where we have these two magicians that are in a competition with each other. It's not a competition they chose, it is a competition that two other magicians have pitted them against each other, and they didn't have a choice in it. And you see them grow up and grow in their magical abilities. As a result, this circus is formed. It is amazing. Like, this circus is the circus of dreams. Anything is possible in this circus. But you see how, because of this magician's battle, how they are inflicting pain amongst other people's lives, the other performers. You see the fallout of all of that, how they didn't think about it. You have multiple different timelines in this book, but it all weaves together and comes together at the end, and I just think it works beautifully. I loved this book and I cannot believe I put it off for so long, and I don't understand why I never thought I would enjoy it. It's almost like a more grown-up version of Carvel by Stephanie Gabar, but better, like so much better. The writing and that is just so much more sophisticated. The atmosphere is better. Don't get me wrong, I love the Carvel series. It's a good solid 4-star series, but I would say this is definitely an adult version of that, just in terms of the sophistication of the book, the way it's all brought together. It's amazing. It's perfect. I love it. Sorry if like positioning changed slightly. My battery died, so I just had to swap it over. Anyway, let's carry on. So the other book that I want to talk about that was almost book of the month was Wrath by John Gwynne. Loved it. It's freaking amazing. I just cannot get over this series. So this was the fourth and last installment in the Faithful and Fallen series. It is an amazing epic adult fantasy series which I cannot shout about enough. I mean, everything about it was so good, and this ending, which I cannot talk about because of spoilers, was just there were so many heartbreaking moments, so many moments where you wanted to like cheer to the rooftops. Like, there was so much going on, and I just cannot stop talking about it. If you like adult fantasy, read his books. They're so good. They're amazing. The characters are so well thought out. We have so much that goes on in them. Even the world building, everything that goes on with this. I cannot thank my sister enough for recommending this to me. It was so freaking good. And so in the first book, we're meeting all our characters. We realise we're in this world where there is almost like split between good and evil. Although, let's face it, life is not that black and white. But we have one god for good, one god for evil, and there is this build up of the god war between them, and we are seeing the fallout of that. Now, alongside this, you have a lot of politics. We're following multiple different character perspectives, but it isn't confusing. It follows each other quite well, and all the characters you get are important. They are not just thrown in just for the sake of it. They are all there for a reason. You have giants and magic, and you have things like honor and pride and what is right, what is wrong. The first book is a bit slower because we're watching all our characters grow up. We're watching the start of this war come together, but then the second, third and fourth books are just non-stop. You have so much anxiety for your characters. You want the bad characters to die so badly. Like, there's just so much that goes on, and what an amazing finish. So this was so close to being book of the month, and honestly, this and Night Circus I can say are both book of the month for two very different reasons. Night Circus because of how beautifully written it is, how magical and whimsical, and honestly how surprising that it was that I enjoyed it so much. But this one, just for the sheer impact that it had on my emotions. I read it within a few days. I absolutely loved it. I also read Europeans Travel for Monstrous Gentlewomen by Theodora Goss. This is the second book in the Society of Alchemists series, and I really enjoyed this book. I did listen to it via audiobook, and it was a slow read for me because I was listening to it via audiobook. It is a huge book, took a long time to read, but I really did enjoy it. So we are following daughters of people from classic horror stories. So we have the daughter of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, we have Frankenstein mentioned, we also have daughter of a few other people, and they're all part of the Society of Alchemists. We have Dracula referenced in this book quite a lot. In the first book, you're following Mary Jekyll as she discovers that there are these other women who have all been experimented upon by their fathers as part of this Society of Alchemists. In the first book, it's also taking place at the time of the Jack the Ripper murders, and we have Sherlock Holmes make an appearance. Now, at the end of that book, they have solved that case, and they are focusing in on trying to sort out the Society of Alchemists and stop them. And this book continues from there. We have a really big look into the Society of Alchemists. We meet a lot of different characters. Now this is slower paced. I do think it could have been a shorter book, but I still enjoyed every moment of it. And we have a lot of stories of different characters that we are learning. So a lot of it is our characters going to different places, hearing the stories of the characters that they meet, and then moving on. So I do feel like a lot of it could have been cut out, but at the same time I loved all their stories, and this is just a homage to horror classics. Like, it's just a tribute to them, and I love it. So if you like horror classics and you've read a lot of them, I would give this a try. It's a fun read, and I do think our characters are really well done. The way it's written is amazing because we do have moments where our characters are writing this book as we are reading it, and so you'll have moments where they interject their thoughts and opinions into things, and then they'll carry on with the story, which I think just added a nice bit of humour to this book. So yeah, this was 5 stars. I did enjoy it, although it was a little bit bigger than what it probably needed to be. And then the last book for the month I am currently reading, but I do plan on finishing up, is Cashels Dart by Jacqueline Carey. Now I've read this book many times, so I knew it was going to be 5 stars, which is why I can do this wrap up now. But also just look how much that book is tattered by. I really need to replace this book, but I do love it. Now I'm not going to try and do a full comprehensive review of this book right now, because if you've seen my past couple of weekly vlogs, you'd know how much I've struggled with that, and it's just because there's so much going on in this world. We have this world where there is so much politics and stuff, but religion plays an important part as well, because the religion of this world is love as thou will, and that sets the precedent for the story. But basically we have politics and a young girl getting caught up with it all. So this young girl is taken into a household of this prominent figure in society, and he trains her up to be a spy to gather information in places where he wouldn't be able to go. Problem is, he withholds information from her, so she doesn't realise how much importance is behind this information, and then something terrible happens and we get thrust into a world at war, and we don't realise that it was on the brink of war until Deirdre discovers what she uncovers, and it all goes from there. And I am doing a terrible job once again of talking about this book, but it's really hard to give just an overview because so much happens. Now it is a long book, it's over 900 pages long, and I will admit in places it probably doesn't need to be as long as it is. It could have been split into 2 different books and it'd probably be easier to read, which I do understand why it's not for everyone. So I would say if you like fantasy, give this a try. Bear with it, because the first 200-300 pages we're just learning Deirdre as a character. We're seeing her grow up. She's becoming a teenager, so she's so enamoured in her own life and self-absorbed, but that does change, and you see her, because Deirdre is writing this book, reflect upon that when it all does go wrong. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I've got about just under 300 pages left to go, so I am planning on finishing this up today. That was my April reading wrap up. I had a great month. I really did enjoy it. I hope you all had an amazing reading month. Let me know, what was your favourite book of the month? Have you read any of these ones? But I'm gonna stop talking. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it that thumbs up and subscribe. My social media links will be linked below, and I will catch you in the next one.